go for it. Hey, everyone. Thank you for being flexible in that. Again, my name is Kelby McGill. I'm a behavior intervention consultant from the Reno County Education Co-op. My interest and expertise in EdCamp is just appreciating the unconference approach and being able to form a collaborative of individuals who can come with a broad range of topics and find a niche within that group. So I didn't organize a presentation style in the hopes that it could be a topic that would be adaptive and could be discussed amongst those who are in the group. I can change or enhance some of the topic ideas. I just started this as a platform and a framework. For me, the reason that this is a helpful topic is because as we're all seeing, whether it's the current economic times or just the day-to-day things that we face in school, social emotional education and behavior management comes hand in hand with academic growth. So to start out with, is anybody willing to just introduce themselves and or talk about any of the above detailed topics for just an entry?
I'm Natasha Hevelone. This is my second year teaching. We have tiered support, and it is only in English that we do that. And we also have title. However, I want to start in, our school is trying to implement math support. And so I'm just trying to get some ideas on that. And I did go to the math interventions yesterday and I got some ideas.
Nice, that's helpful. Well, I would hope that as we kind of continue to progress, I'm definitely one area of consult. Trying to understand also that those are the expertise and insight that I have would be unique sometimes to my district, and also that the advantage again of EdCamp is that we all offer something. So I appreciate, you said Natasha, correct?
Yes, that's my name.
I just wanted to make sure I got that right. So yeah, I appreciate you introducing yourself, and hopefully as we continue conversation, we can touch on some of that need for or desire for math supports. Second year teaching, wow. I remember my first year and second year, and I wasn't sure I was going to make it out alive. So I already heard in your voice some excitement. I hope that is how it is, and that you're surviving well.
I'm Melissa Bomarito Smith. I teach in the Turner School District, and we are using trauma sensitive approaches with kids. At least some of us are. I think it's hard for people who are pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of people to see that social emotional side for kids and realize that it combines so much with academic learning. So we are trying to get those people on board in our building. Fortunately, it's few, but just struggling to keep everybody realizing that life is hard all around. And if you can't get them to be there emotionally, they don't care about fractions. So that's where we're kind of at.
My name's Ariel, and I teach in Olathe Public Schools, and I am a Title I math teacher. So a huge part of my job description is implementing MTSS, and I am lucky enough to be at a pilot school in our building. And I work alongside Carrie Stark, who was the interventionalist that had a session yesterday. So we are doing a lot of new things for our school district that I'm really proud of and look forward to spreading amongst the entire district systemically.
I'm Juliana Dotson, and I am one of the behavior coaches for the school, for the Olathe School District. And before being in Olathe, I was a gardener, and coming to Olathe was a shock that there is no MTSS system. Yes, Erin, it varies from building to building. It's very, very frustrating. I was in buildings at Gardner that it took years for us to get to the point that they are right now, but you ask any teacher, they know the system and you know the expectations. It's not perfect, it's far from being perfect, and it has its obstacles, but in a way, it gave people some guidelines of what to do when they couldn't solve the problem within the tier one. And they knew where to start. They knew what they needed. They knew what kind of documentation they needed. I'm not quite sure if Gardner moved, Erin, maybe you know that, but they were trying to move to one form, like a set meeting form, the same or similar one for the entire district, because each building has its own. And I appreciate that because, different buildings have different needs. But it's very weird to sit sometimes. I sit in a lot of tier 3 sit meetings for kids with behavior, but sometimes they also have academic needs. And I see these teachers talk about academic, like they have nothing. There is no data to talk about it. And when it comes to the behavior, it's sometimes expected. In Gardner, the teachers would bring data. Later it's kind of hard to see that they're not there yet. So it makes my job not difficult, but I see myself adapting to each building differently because there is not a system in place. So for me, MTSS, it goes hand in hand with PBIS and all the other practice that we do to create that system that help kids move through the tiers, and then we are not let kids fall through the cracks.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. Someone else is
Nope.
on.
Nope, go for it, Jennifer. Sorry about that.
I'm Jennifer Jones. I'm a school psychologist with the Olathe School District, and this has been my, I think, 9th year in the schools. I came from 20 years in mental health before that, so changing where I'm still providing mental health services because I work with high school students, just in a different format. So I'm excited to hear what we have to talk about today.
My name is Carrie Shamit. I teach in Olathe as well. I'm kind of on the other side. I teach electives. So we don't necessarily get the same information and support, but we still get the same kids. So I'm excited to kind of see what everybody uses, because sometimes we're kind of left out in the dark, I guess is the right phrase. So just excited to hear what other people do.
I'm Taylor Rabel, and I also teach in Olathe and I actually work with Carrie. She's the best, and you guys should go to her sessions this afternoon or this morning. She's awesome. But I'm the same thing. I'm just here just to kind of learn from you guys. I teach 8th grade language arts, so I actually attend a lot of MTSS sit type meetings. So I'm just here to learn from all of you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Hazen, and I'm a 2nd grade teacher in Olathe, and I'm just here to kind of get some new ideas. This is probably my toughest class that I've had, and I've been teaching for 15 years. So I'm just looking to see if there are new ideas, and I know we're down to the last month and a half with our students, but it's never too late to change things up and get new things going. So I'm just here to get new ideas.
Okay, well, I will kind of take this back for just a minute. This is Kelby again. If anybody else wants to introduce themselves, please raise your hand, or definitely when the opportunity arises, we would love to hear how things are in your district or what brought you to the session. Just from the brief introductions that we already did get, I can say that I have seen that in my field and the work that I do every day. Some of those instances of trying to manage tier 1 all the way to tier 3 supports, the needs within the classroom and what the teachers are facing, the desire for understanding what behavior looks like in the classroom, in the school environment, and how it impacts the student and all that it touches. I can say, Jelena, I appreciate the discussion that you had on data tracking. That is something for me. I am a master's level social worker and also have training in behavior analytics. So I'm an autism specialist. In our district, we have 5 districts under our interlocal, and data tracking is a difficult element, yet it's also helpful in talking about interventions and the response of them. So how, if anybody's willing, what works well for some of you who are tracking data well? Are there certain programs? Are you doing it on Google Forms? If anybody's willing to speak up about that, that might be a great place to start.
Hey, Juliana, can I volunteer you to talk about this? Only because my friend who I had help with your help with when I had that grid, and it was like anytime there was an incident, I had to fill out like what was happening right before, what was happening, and then you helped me get it into a Google, an Excel sheet so we could see it. So you want to talk about that? It was awesome. It is awesome.
Erin and I, we created some sort of ABC data sheet for this student, and we were able to see, we went from the data sheet to Google Forms to graphs, right, Erin? Is that what we did? Okay. And actually, I'm going to have a session on that at noon if anyone want to attend. But when it comes to data and when it comes to, it's the same for reading, math, and behavior. The differences here is that when it comes to reading and math, sometimes we have programs that the district are already using, right? That makes our life much easier. When it comes to behavior, we have to create our own things. And what I try to tell teachers is, do not recreate the wheel. Use the resources you have around you, use the people that you have. And when it comes to the behavior data, use things that can turn into numbers and not narratives. Because numbers, we can see numbers change every day. So we can see it going up or down. We can use to create graphs. And it's the same with the reading. Like if you use DIBELS, or if you have used DIBELS in your district, or not DIBELS, Acadians, or whatever the name is now, you have seen the graphs that they use to show the directions that the students are going. Olathe use, what is the name? Anyone can tell me what Olathe uses, Ariel?
We use Mastery Connect.
And you can see graphs there on too, right? So
unfortunately, the graph, I would say no, but there is a lot of different ways that you can format the data, but I wouldn't say graphing is a forte of Mastery Connect.
Okay. That's a bummer because it's a pretty cool program. It's pretty cool. I like Mastery Connect. Anyway, when you show data visually, when you can turn data from numbers to visual data, it helps us understand the data and also see the direction that the behavior that we're addressing is going, regardless if it's reading, math, or behavior, or any other data. It helps us decide what else we need to do. If the student is getting, if we're doing some sort of accuracy phonics intervention and the students getting the same score week after week after week, that means that our intervention is not working. So what else can we do? And it's the same thing for behavior and math. I don't know if I answer your questions or if that's what you wanted to talk about, but.
That's what I wanted. Can you say what each, like what the A, the B, the C is, and then F? Can you say what those stood for?
Yeah. So the ABC data was antecedent, behavior, consequence. So the antecedents will come right before the behavior. So whatever the behavior you're tracking, so if it's hitting, the A is coming right, the antecedents, right, what happened right before the student hit. The C, it's what came right after the behavior. And the F, it's what function that is, why is the student doing that behavior? So with that, we were able to make a plan that determined what the student, the function, we were able to come up with interventions that met the function. So the student didn't have to do the behavior, the undesirable behavior to get to the function, the why.
Yeah. So for example, my kid, his function sometimes was avoidance. He didn't like the science activity that we were doing because he maybe didn't want to have a partner. So the function of his was to get out of the situation. So we just were able to say, you know, if he didn't want to have a partner, could he do the activity alone? And if he could, then he was, that we never saw the behavior because he was not having to do the behavior because he was able to complete the activity. That makes sense.
Yes, so you find interventions that fit the same function. So if the student's trying to escape an activity, and in that case that Erin just gave as an example was because he did not want to do with a partner, then you find ways to fit the same function. What can we do so he doesn't have to escape the activity, or he doesn't have to escape the entire activity? Does it make sense? And it varies, guys. This is just one small example, but we use the terminology, we're going to think functionally, meaning that we're going to think of the behavior, of the reason behind why the student's doing the behavior, the reason why. And it's usually to get something or to avoid something. It's one of the two.
Is there any way, I have some really neat little breakdown charts on the 4 kind of standard functions of eat, escape, attention, tangible, and sensory. But it looks at it in an application that is broad. And so it's helpful sometimes for people to look at that. Is there, since I'm on my phone, I would like to be able to extend the link later. Do we have a platform on this EdCamp that I can attach that information to at the conclusion of this session, or how might it be best to spread some of this information?
We are going to be sharing the link of this recorded session and any other resources you want to provide to whoever wanted to look at the resource. So you can send everything to me and I can put on the grid.
That'd be great. Does anyone else have any questions or any resources about just tracking antecedent behavior consequence, or when you've used data tracking, whether it's for your functional behavior assessment, behavior intervention plan, response to intervention, or SIP processes? Anybody have any helpful tools with that?
I will just say that it's amazing to me what data can tell us. And even working with very skilled people I have a classroom in high school of nonverbal students. And we had a student who started getting aggressive several times a day. And the teacher thought for sure she knew what it was. And I was like, let's just graph the data and the times and all of that. And we found out this girl was probably a teenage girl, was going through a growth spurt because 2 hours after she would eat a meal, she would have behaviors. So we hypothesized that she was hungry. So we, before she would have her behavior, we just planned, okay, at 8:50, she's going to get a snack. And then after 2 hours after lunch, so at 1:15 or something, she was getting a snack, and we weren't having behaviors anymore. And we didn't know that at all. It didn't even cross our minds until we started charting that data, and we saw that there was a pattern that 2 hours after she had started her meal, she had behaviors again. So
Go ahead. If somebody else wanted to speak, go for it.
I was just going to say, I love that Juliana said that it really needs to be brought back to like a numerical form instead of a narrative, because that was kind of the game changer for me as a classroom teacher. I would see lots of things that I would need to go into a meeting and explain, and it's extremely long-winded. When you can actually just show numbers, it's really, really more beneficial to the people that maybe don't get to spend as much time with that particular student. It just speaks more volumes than stories at times.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
Sorry, Kelby, go ahead.
No, and sorry, and I apologize too. You guys are doing so great in helping me with this through the phone difficulties. But I wanted to mention a couple of things with what you guys said. I agree, and that's one of the things that is a strength of my role, in that I really enjoy the teams that I work with and those that ask questions about how can I track this data, but how can I do it in a way that's embedded within my day? Because I might not be able to carry a chart with me all day long, or my paras might not be able to carry a chart, or how do we keep fidelity? Because what I track and what I see might be different than what somebody else sees. And so the conversations that come from these platforms and approaches are helpful because it brings us all together. When we're in a school setting, or at least from my standpoint, sometimes it's hard to have these conversations when our days are so infiltrated with the multiple demands and requests. And in reference to the individual that had kind of that latency in behavior responses after eating, one of the things that came to my mind in antecedent behavior consequence tracking that I often recognize with teams is that there was often close supervision or support, like a para or a teacher. And so the function often had more heavy influence, I would say, on hypothesizing attention. So I really, really enjoy using antecedent behavior consequence contingencies when I'm working with groups. I also let them know, like, trying to look at what immediately happened after the behavior, because sometimes it looks like it was social in some way, when it may be more of escape or a combination of. So I will stop that part of the conversation, since I think I kind of lost my track and where I was going. But what other forms, or we're kind of rolling on that part of it, what other forms or tools are great for people in behavior tracking?
I just want to go back very quick to what Ariel mentioned about the importance of numbers to be able to visually see data. One thing that's in working with my buildings, I have 6 buildings in Olathe that we are really trying to move away from, is to, when we decide what behavior we're going to track, we focus on the behavior we want to see more of. So I'm not going to track aggression. I'm going to track what I want to see more of. I want to see him using safer body. Okay, so what do we need for him to use safer body? Okay, so let's put these interventions in place. And now let's use this data sheet that's super simple. It's like, yes, you have to mark the behavior if he showed safe body or not. So you do have to use the data sheet. And then we mark yes or no. Did the student have safe body during this time? Yes or no. Then at the end of the day, we can put the data on either an Excel or Google Sheets and make into graphs. And over time, we can see if the interventions we're doing are working. But you cannot do that if you do not know what safe body looks like. And it may be completely different from Johnny to Mary to Danny. Safe body, the word safe body, if I ask everyone here, what do you think safe body is? We may come up with at least 5 or 6 different definitions of a safe body, right? Maybe someone gonna say, oh, safe body also means being quiet. Safe body means just not hitting anyone else. Safe body means if I threw a bottle out of out of impulsivity because I'm upset, that's being unsafe. So safe body varies so much. So it's very important to define the behavior we are tracking so we have data that is consistency and with fidelity, so we see if the plan is working or not. So for that to happen, we do the ABC to figure out the function and to help us create a plan. And then we come up with a data sheet or a data system that we can do over time, throughout the day and over time, to see if the plan is working. So, and that's when people get so anxious sometimes, because there are so many pieces of the puzzle that it's easy to lose a piece and then you don't see the connections. And then, Carrie, I see you here, and one thing that I'm really trying to work on, it's going, and I have elementary schools only, but I try to go to the PLC on whatever day, and I talk to them about their student plan, because yes, it's so easy to forget the elective and specials teachers, and they have all the kids year after year after year. They are our best resources because they have the kids. Anyhow.
I was going to say also involving the student depending on the age and asking them. So again, I'm going to go back to the student that Julie and I kind of worked with together. I would ask him, like, so it was yes, no. So his was like, was my body calm? Was my voice steady? I can't remember what the words were, but I would ask at the end of whatever time period, I would say, how would you rate yourself, a 0, 1, 2, or whatever it would be? And so involving him in it, and even like if he had an upset moment, I wouldn't obviously ask him in that moment, but maybe later in the day, well, think back to this situation. How would you rate yourself? And he was, at 3rd grade, he was very honest, and not all 3rd graders can be that honest and be like, oh, well, some might just say they were perfect all the time, or some are negative about themselves. But depending on the child, just involving them in how did you see your behavior? What's a goal you want to have for yourself? What do you think we should be looking for? So even if you as the teacher want to make sure, is their body safe? Are they like ready to learn? Whatever you guys decide that would look like. Maybe the student gets to create another column of, was I nice to peers? Maybe that's what they want to work on, something like that, because maybe they want to make friends, and maybe they want to make sure that that's something they want to see. So involving the student is a big thing. So
Ariel, I love that you mentioned that. That made me think of the preference assessments and what are that individual's motivators. When we're often looking at behavior and tracking it, what I see teams like most is, how do we get rid of this behavior? How do we extinguish it? And so that data is nice for looking at what is happening in the topography of both unwanted and desired behaviors. I'm in complete agreement with you guys that what you look for is what you find, and finding meaningful ways for an individual to feel included in as a part of a community, especially within school, is huge. Those preference assessments and those motivators are for skill builders. So that's for that when we are trying to increase what behaviors are desired, knowing what motivates that individual, the motivating operants. And sometimes those are natural in the environment. It can be simple as positive praise in the classroom. Sometimes with individuals, it's tangible, it's a snack, or it's access to an activity. So knowing what motivates the individual as much as what is the function behind the behavior, at least in the teams that I work with, is something that we really try to target.
So I'm just curious, do you guys, is there anything you guys are doing right now in a classroom that you have found very, very successful? Since we have so many people from different, like we have high schoolers, we have middle schoolers here, teachers, not students. I wonder what you're doing in your classroom that you have found beneficial, or you have done in the past that you have found beneficial.
I think even just adding morning meeting just in the last 3 or 4 years that we've done it, not that we have amazing breakthroughs of the emotion necessarily, but just giving every kid a chance to talk. Like I start every single morning meeting, we have a would you rather, and some of them are like, would you rather, like this week was, would you rather hold a spider or a slug? Or would you rather have butterfly wings or eagle's wings? Like something like that. And just letting each kid answer. And then if they have a reason, and some kids want to, give you 5 sentences about why they want butterfly wings, and just giving them that outlet to speak, and just building that in at the beginning of the day is helpful. And then they get to have like a little bit of talk time. I usually give them a question to ask each other when they say good morning to each other, but just not starting the day being like, here we are, it's time to learn, but just like letting them have that a little bit of social time before we start, I think helps a lot of students kind of ease into the morning.
And just speaking behaviorally, that fits the function of getting attention from peers. And if you have those students in your classroom, and I believe all of you guys have those students, that you're already giving them a way to get that done. And just because we say everyone does a behavior for a function, it doesn't need to be an undesired behavior. So that's why I'm saying some kids, they may look for appropriate ways to have that function being met, and some kids don't. But I'm a big fan of morning meeting for several different reasons. The SEL piece, the connection piece, creating that family atmosphere in the classroom.
I kind of joined late, but I work in a self-contained classroom, and one of my students we are working on with when he acts out or has really upset. We have behavior or emotion cards that we like to have him to, we try to get him to connect with his own emotions, and then try to get to, because he'll be so upset. And when we first started this, we would put out, like upset, mad, or happy, and he would always choose happy, no matter what emotion he had. And he would yell at you, "I'm happy." So instead of, giving him the happy choice, because it would always choose happy. So whatever emotion he was feeling, we would definitely have those either 2 or 3 emotions that it was more like. He would, begin to say, he would still tell us he was happy, and just us explaining. And I've gotten different kind of books and different little cards that explain, what it looks like when you're mad or happy or upset. And he's starting to kind of finally pick those cards, or he doesn't want to, but at least he doesn't yell, I'm happy, or he doesn't always choose that anymore. But just having him focus on what it is, what emotion it is.
I might segue into that one. I love that. We actually have a team in, when you mentioned self-contained classroom, that's an interesting concept too, simply because sometimes the interventions and the tools that we use in a more of like a special ed setting are different than general education setting tools. Not that one is better placed than the other, but sometimes it's because of the intimacy of the setting, or just the various factors. One of the tools that we've used recently, and it made me think of it when you talked about the emotions card, is we've used some of the mood trackers or the self-care trackers that are already apps installed that have 5-point scales on them. And then we've also used like zones of regulation with oximeters and pulsometers, whether that was just with one individual in the classroom or with a whole class that could then use a math curriculum or session to look at what do my days look like as a whole, what are my averages. So sometimes the interventions aren't just unique to the individual. They can be utilized as a tier 1 or as a curriculum support too. I love that you mentioned that.
One thing that I do, which again, it's not so much for just the individual struggling, it's for all kids. Before this year, I always opened up my classroom before school and I had board games. We had 3 Jengas, a couple Uno decks, the game Trouble, and a couple others. And some of the ones that really struggled or acted out in my class or before school, I would always invite them in to my room and I really got to know them. And it was amazing how much better they did in my class. Plus, they weren't out in the morning causing trouble before school. And then this year, I couldn't do that because I'm not in a class with kids, but each semester at the beginning, I mailed home a welcome letter. And I thought it just sounded so like too young for the middle schoolers. It was like, welcome to my class. I sent home a Bitmoji of me waving, like saying, use this if you need help. And I was amazed at how many of even the 8th graders just thought it was the coolest thing. In Zoom, they'd be like, look, Miss Shamit, like, or I'd see it behind them on the wall. And then every month I send postcards to one class. So 5 classes. I try to send them postcards at least twice a quarter. And that has really helped build the relationship, which has helped build the behavior in the classroom.
Oh, I love that, Carrie. That's absolutely amazing. And the little things, like the board games, what an awesome way, because you're right. They are not getting in trouble. They're getting to know you. That means that when they are in your classroom for electives, they're going to be more willing to respond to you because they know you. So it's like a win-win situation. The relationship is so, so important. I used to be a ED teacher the past 3 years, and people would ask me, why this is so successful now? Why these kids are succeeding? Why they are in the classroom? What are you doing differently? And I always told them I had 2 foundational pillars, whatever you want to call it: relationship and positive reinforcement. You cannot get these kids that have difficult behaviors without those 2 things. Relationship is priority. And I will tell the gen ed teachers, I'll tell them, first quarter, do not even think about redirecting this kid. Focus on being just building relationship. Let the parent deal with the behavior. I can come and deal with the behavior. Your main responsibility here is just to get to know this kid, because it's going to take time. Because the most difficult ones, they need the most and they take the longest. So what a great way. Yeah. It's a lot of work that you had to put up front, but it pays off at the end.
Juliana, I like that because it makes me think of instructional control. And when you talked about behaviors are hard, and some of the conversations with teachers, even in their desperation, is like, what do you have going for you? Well, I'm connected. That is huge. And so I emphasize when I talk about instructional control, I often also feel like sometimes teachers get the pretense in conversations with them that they're looked at by their fellow colleagues as not having control of this student. And so adopting more of a mindset that instructional control looks like the connection you have with the individual, and how have you paired yourself as a person that is improving of overall conditions versus worsening of. And teachers are often so good at that, even just by these conversations we've already had about morning meetings, emotions card, board games, welcome letters, monthly postcards. Those are all part of that connection piece. And pairing connection with instructional control oftentimes makes the individual it's kind of its own reinforcer in itself. Like, I want to be around you and I want to learn from you. The other thing I might say quickly, and then I'll pass it back to the rest of you guys, is there is some really great work by Dr. Hanley on happy, relaxed, engaged. And it's getting that individual into a a position where learning comes from how our brain is developed, and that's inside out, right to left, and bottom up. And so for an individual to be able to learn well, we utilize some of those components of finding my happy spot and learning while I'm in that happy spot. So if you haven't looked at Dr. Hanley, he's a really neat one on happy, relaxed, engaged. Another person I like is Karen Purvis. She's definitely for lower or younger kids, but goes all the way up through high school. So I'll turn it back over to anybody else who might have some comments.
Can you say their names again, Dr. Hanley, and what was the other one?
Or just type on the text on the chat.
Yep, I'll do that.
Thank you. So what else have you guys done that you probably don't even know you were doing and seeing the effect, the positive effect? You know, sometimes it's just the good old thing you do year after year and you don't know how well you were doing, but it's creating a big impact. Anything else you guys are doing that?
I had class jobs a lot. And I didn't do it my first year teaching, but even though it was a lot of work for me, I always tried to have a class pet, which the class earned as a whole class reward, and then maintain the reward by earning things for the class pet. And I just found that it was such a community builder that it was worth dragging it home when it was going to snow to make sure it didn't get too cold in the classroom, those sorts of things. The sense of community and the sense of having to come to school to check on their beloved Cuddlezilla was worth all of the trouble, because it was a shared interest for kids that maybe had a hard time sharing their interests with their peers.
So Ariel, you just didn't go to the store and put a pet in your classroom and said, oh, here's our class pet. You have intentionality behind, and you use the pet that was a lot of work to work for you, for your classroom, to have a community. And that's, I think that sometimes we do things and we just do because, oh, I saw on Pinterest or I saw on Instagram, but that doesn't work. If it's working for the teacher on Instagram, is because she used intentionality behind. She had the purpose for that. That's pretty cool. I like that.
There was always a conversation behind how they were earning things and why they weren't maybe earning things in a day. They would earn money towards the cost of everything that it needed before they would actually earn the pet. And it opened really good conversations for typical behavior, what would be expected at the beginning of the year teaching procedures. But then the real reward came when kids wanted to come to school because they wanted to check on that, or they wanted to stay in at recess because they wanted to help take care of that. So I don't know. And I always found that was a time when I could always have completely unacademic related conversations with them as well. So that was an excellent added bonus.
Something I did, I had to let the kids know. I had like if they wanted me to take a picture, like if they were really proud of their work, and for all students, and I could email it to their parents. Obviously, I mean, like at third grade, they don't have their own emails to do that sort of thing. But so if they were really proud of something they drew, even if it was an indoor recess, or if they built something with Legos or something like that, or if it was like their science experiment, they were like, Mrs. Brown, come take a picture of whatever we're blowing up and whatnot. But yeah, so I would take a picture of it and I would send it to their parent. I'm like, this, your child was so excited about doing this, they wanted to share it with you today. And just knowing that it would be sitting in their parents' email box, or if I could text it on the different platforms so the parent could see it immediately. And then that also helped me build that relationship, not only with the student, but with the parent, because they would get a message, in the middle of the day of, this is their child playing on the monkey bars, or this is their child working really hard on a fraction worksheet or something like that. Just seeing how, when they are recognizing that they are proud of themselves and being able to share that with their parents, so they can't just be like, I didn't do anything today, or seeing that they have those proud moments throughout the day.
Ariel, I might tie into that and just say that I like that component even on when we're talking about how it relates to functional behavior assessments or behavior intervention plans. If the school has a SIT team, a student improvement team, getting the students and families' voice in there is sometimes something that is so, I want to say easy, and I don't mean easy, but it's so simple, but yet so hard sometimes to achieve, because a lot of the times we're spending the day in the school, and our repertoire to work from is what we see in school. I often really use and like those preference assessments, the student and parent questionnaires, and rely heavily on them to look at if we are creating a behavior intervention plan, that we don't just list things like what the crisis plan is and what the reactive plan is, but we also look at antecedent-based strategies, and that some of those antecedent or tertiary supports look like calling home to mom with a great day. Because what typically we see on a behavior intervention plan is that if a student has undesired behavior, an administrative referral will be made and parents will be called. So flipping that around a little bit to reduce the likelihood of that and including the parents and students in that has always been beneficial for me as well.
Yes,
Yeah, I was going to hit on that too, where parent being involved and having those connections with parents really help out too, because then you're able to see, is this happening at home? And you can all be on the same page. And if parents are willing to talk to you and help kind of guide things at home, it makes it a lot easier. So yeah, parent connection is important.
Juliana, did you have anything that, as we've been discussing, that kind of may summarize and wrap up, since we're getting in within that 10-minute time frame of closure? Or what might you have as you've thought about things that we talked about?
Well, one thing that I think it's important to mention is use the resources you have around. If you are in Olathe, you are blessed with a gigantic amount of supports that make all the other districts around you pretty jealous. You have a lot of people to help you. You have the counselors, social workers, autism specialists, behavior coaches, instructional coaches, SPED instructional coach. But if you're not and you have your SPED people, you have your school psych, you have your resource teacher. If you have a specialized program, you have those teachers as well. If you are not later, use your people. You go to them, brainstorm with them, use your colleagues, your SPED teachers. Sometimes principals have very good input on that too. Just don't feel like you have to deal with the behavior alone, because and don't take offense on the behavior either. When a student does something in your classroom, they are not trying to piss you off, guys. Sorry, my language. This is being recorded. They are not trying to make you mad. Don't take it personal. They are dysregulated. Assume that there is something that happened. If you're gonna assume something happened, and go from there. Don't feel like it's something you did or you didn't do. And if you have kids of your own, try to think like, what I would like a teacher to do if my son or daughter did that at school? Because then you're going to come from a place of caring and loving, or then like, I want to punish you for doing this to me. Usually that doesn't work and break relationship. And then now you have a bigger problem, because you have to work on relationship and trying to come up with a solution to help. And you're not alone. Just use the people you have around you. I don't know. I will be sharing later on today, after I do my session at noon, I'll be sharing a couple of data sheet as well. On the recording, on the grid, you're gonna see my recording and also some resources. If you need idea for data sheets, you can find there.
Well, thank you. I think that kind of gets close to wrapping things up, at least from the way I see it, unless anybody else has any perspective on that. The thing that I would add to what you just said is that self-care is a big part of putting boundaries in place for other people as well. So when you say reach out, for all of us who are working with behaviors, that is a staple. And then what you do for yourself is big for that too. And having sessions like this is definitely a form for me of self-care. It strengthens my competency and knowing that I'm connected and plugged into other people. So I hope others have appreciated that, and whatever your self-care looks like, make time for that this weekend and as we close up this school year.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna pause the recording, and unfortunately I have to leave because I have to manage another session at 10.
Thank you.